the rule of precedent is not the rule of international law. So the rule of precedent is not the rule of international law. The statutes of the International Court of Justice that we have mentioned previously in Article 38 states that the court whose function is to decide in accordance with international law such disputes as are submitted to it shall apply, and it's here, D, subject to provisions of Article 59, judicial decisions as subsidiary means for the determination of the rule of law. Okay? So it means that the court of course will take into account its own jurisprudence, its own decisions, but this is only a subsidiary means for the determination of a rule of law. The previous decisions by the International Court of Justice are not some sources of international law before the International Court of Justice. But of course the question, so the International Court of Justice, of course, will and is relying on its own jurisprudence to justify its decisions, and the judicial decisions by the International Court of Justice are used by the International Court of Justice to justify or to explain its reasoning in every case. But of course, the question is, what is the influence of a judicial decision, of an international judicial decision, adopted, let's say, by the International Court of Justice, on an international tribunal that is not the International Court of Justice? So, what are the effects that, what are the effects of a judgment adopted by the International Court of Justice on, I don't know, the World Trade Organization dispute settlement body, or on the International Arbitral Tribunal, or on the European Court of Human Rights, or on the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea, etc., etc. So is there a hierarchy between two international tribunals? Stating that one international tribunal, let's say the International Court of Justice, prevail the decision of the International Court of Justice prevails over the decisions of another international tribunal. Well, or to give you maybe something like a more concrete presentation. We could easily imagine that the same provision of the same treaty could be invoked before the International Court of Justice and before an arbitral tribunal. Okay, we could have a case between, well, let's say, states A and B, which are parties to a treaty, and the case is brought before the International Court of Justice, and one of the issue is to determine the meaning of, let's say, Article 1 of the treaty. And we could have an other dispute between, let's say, state C and D, which are also parties to the same treaty, and the dispute is brought not before the International Court of Justice, but before the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea, which is an international tribunal. And, well, and let's say that the dispute is regarding the interpretation of Article 1, so the same provision of the same treaty before the International Court of Justice and before the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea. The question is, if the International Court of Justice decides on the meaning of Article 1 on the January 1st, 2019, will the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea have to interpret the same provision the same way that the International Court of Justice did in January 2019 in Malta? So you see what the problem could be here, or is it clear, the example? Just a very basic situation. The same treaty is invoked in two disputes, one before the International Court of Justice, one before an other international tribunal. The International Court of Justice decides first, okay, so gives an interpretation of the provision, or to the provision. The second tribunal, which will decide later, does it have to follow what the International Court of Justice has previously decided? So, to put it another way, well, is there a formal hierarchy between international tribunals? Do international tribunals have to follow what the International Court of Justice decides? Or, if not, can we have different interpretations for the same provision of the same treaty between or before two different international tribunals?
Sorry, I think yes. I think that.
Yes, what?
The other court have to follow the ICJ decision for the reason of to maintain the consistency of the interpretation of the law.
Okay.
Imagine if the other judicial body trying to interpret the law in the favor of it's going to be like conflict and there's like misunderstanding and disagreement.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's one point. So your position is that, well, let's say that there is, well, still the same issue, what is the child. If there's a dispute before the ICJ between A and B in 1990 or 1980, okay, and the ICJ states that the child is someone who is more than, or less than, someone who is someone who is under 16. Okay? And if we have an arbitral tribunal for a dispute between C and D in 1990, you say that that tribunal has to decide the same. That's what you say. Because the tribunal must try to ensure the consistency of the interpretation. So you say that here it has to be the same. Let's say that, well, I will tell you what it is. If the thing is that the arbitral tribunal speaks first in 1980, say it's under 16. You think that the ICJ in 1990, the answer is still the same? So you think that the ICJ has to follow the interpretation adopted 10 years earlier by an arbitral tribunal?
In this case, no, ICJ doesn't have to follow the arbitral tribunal.
So there's no need for consistency in that case.
I mean,
Well, I don't know. You told me that in the other case there was a need for consistency, and now we don't need consistency anymore.
to me personally, I think it's because ICJ is.
You're the only one who can say what is consistency. No, the answer is that an international tribunal can say whatever it wants, be it the International Court of Justice or an international tribunal or any other tribunal. There's no, you're right, the question of consistency, we will say a few words on that. It's an element that the court may have to take into account. But an international tribunal is not bound by the judicial decisions of other international tribunals. And even the International Court of Justice is not bound by its own judicial decisions. It's only a subsidiary means for the determination of rules of law. So, a court, a tribunal, be it the International Court of Justice or any other international tribunal, of course, cannot ignore what the other international tribunals may have decided previously. But there is absolutely no obligation, no legal obligation to follow the interpretation decided by other international tribunals. and even the International Court of Justice could change its interpretation on one case or on one provision. What can I say? If we go back to the question of the living instruments, by definition, if the convention is a living instrument, it means that the interpretation that you adopted in the past will not be the one you may decide today, because the meaning may evolve. Okay, so in that case, you are not bound. Clearly, that's a sign that you are not bound by your own decision. So there is no rule of precedence in international law. The decisions of the tribunals are binding on the parties. Of course, the parties to disputes are bound by the decisions of the International Court of Justice or of any international tribunal. But there is no rule of precedence, and we could easily imagine that an international tribunal could decide not to follow the interpretation decided by the International Court of Justice or any other international court or international tribunal. But we can. But you're right when you say that, of course, the decisions of the International Court of Justice have an inherent or natural authority, because the International Court of Justice is one of the 6 principal organs of the United Nations. So 193 states are parties to the statute of the International Court of Justice. So this is the most prestigious court in international law. So of course, its jurisprudence, its opinion cannot be ignored. And we can mention here a case before the World Trade Organization dispute settlement body, which is what we will see. You will see that in a few months with Vincent Tolkiewicz. It's the judge of the World Trade Organization. Not exactly judge, but we can say that it is the judge of the World Trade Organization. And in a dispute between the European Union and the US and Canada, the question of the authority of the decisions of the International Court of Justice has been raised, and we can mention that here. So the case. Well, I explain you the case first. Well, the European communities adopted in the mid-90s a decision to forbid the sale, the importation, the use of meat and meat products of beef coming from animals who received an hormonal treatment. Hormonal treatment means that, well, you feed the beef with some medicines, some drugs, to make it go bigger and faster. Okay, so you feed the beef with hormones. So the European communities say that it believes that this is unhealthy and that it is dangerous for the for human health. So if you eat this kind of product, you may be sick. It may increase the risk of cancer. So the European Community decided to forbid those products, but the US and Canada were exporting those products on the European market. And of course, they complained before the World Trade Organization, saying that the decision of the European communities was not taken in accordance with the World Trade Organization law. And the defense, or the main element raised by the European community was that the decision was taken in conformity with the precautionary principle. The precautionary principle is a principle that emerged in the 1990s and in the field of international law again of the environment and international law of health. And the precautionary principle states that you don't need to have the certainty of the risk to forbid an activity or a product. So you don't have to prove the dangers of the product to decide to forbid the product on the market. Okay? So the European community say we don't have to prove that this is a dangerous product. We think it is dangerous, so we don't import it anymore on the market. But the question is, or was, can you rely on the precautionary principle? Is the precautionary principle a rule of international law? And this is what is discussed in paragraph 123. The WTO appellate body, you will see that there are two judges at the WTO, states that the status of the precautionary principle in international law continues to be the subject of debate among academics, law practitioners, regulators, and judges. The precautionary principle is regarded by some as having crystallized into a general principle of customary international environmental law. Whether it has been accepted by members as a principle of general or customary international law appears less than clear. Okay, so the appellate body says that, well, we don't know if it's a rule of international law. It's a rule of customary international law. We consider, however, that it is unnecessary and probably imprudent for the appellate body in this appeal to take a position on this important but abstract question. We note that the panel itself, the panel is the first judge of the World Trade Organization, we note that the panel itself did not make any definitive finding with regard to the status of the precautionary principle in international law, and that the precautionary principle, at least outside the field of international environmental law, still awaits authoritative formulation. Okay? And there's a footnote. The footnote is the important part of the decision. The footnote is there. So that is footnote number 93. The appellate body states that in case concerning the Capchico Animals project versus Hungary and Slovakia, the International Court of Justice recognized that in the field of environmental protection, new norms and standards have been developed, set forth in a great number of instruments during the last 2 decades. Such new norms have to be taken into consideration, and such new standards given proper weight. However, so now it's the appellate body, however, we as one of those recently developed norms. So, what does it say? What does this say on the perception of the International Court of Justice by the judge of the World Trade Organization? What can we say on the rule of precedent, the influence of the International Court of Justice on other international tribunals? You read this, or the footnote, and this. So, what can we say?
From my understanding, the precautionary principle is only applied to the environmental law and treaties. For the trade organization, there is no clear evidence that the import of, give the example, in the case of import of the beef that contain hormones affect the health of the user, so there's no clear evidence. So that the court says this has to be waiting for the authoritative formulation.
Yeah, and where could that authoritative formulation, where could it come from? Or we read what the appellate body says or writes.
I think the authoritative formulation here is going to be for the EU.
What could this mean? Well, we're trying to illustrate the question of the rule of precedent. Okay, I told you that there is no rule of precedent under international law or in international law. It means that every tribunal has the right to decide what it thinks is the law. Okay, it means that every single tribunal has the right to say that the precautionary principle is a customary rule of international law or is not a customary rule of international law. But in that case, the WTO appellate body says that, well, first it records that there are some debates on regarding the legal status of the precautionary principle. And the appellate body says that whether it has been accepted by members as a principle of general or customary international law appears less than clear. Okay, so in fact, there is no clear evidence that the precautionary principle is a rule of customary international law. But the appellate body could try to decide if it is a rule of customary international law. But that's not what the appellate body decided to do. It said that it is unnecessary and probably imprudent for it to take a position on this important but abstract question. Okay? And the appellate body says that, well, in the García-Givaros case in 1997, the International Court of Justice said that new norms of international law, new standards of international law appeared in the last 2 decades. But the appellate body noted that, however, the court did not identify the precautionary principle as one of those recently developed norms. So what the appellate body says here, it is, well, I don't know if the precautionary principle is a rule of customary international law. I will not tell you if the precautionary principle is a rule of customary international law. I rely on the statements made by the International Court of Justice in 1997, so 1 year earlier. The International Court of Justice did not identify the precautionary principle as recently developed norms, so it's the end of the case. The appellate body says, okay, the ICJ says that the precautionary principle is not a rule of customary international law, so the precautionary principle is not a rule of customary international law. It means that in that case, the World Trade Organization appellate body relies absolutely on the opinion of the International Court of Justice. Okay? Stating that the only authoritative formulation could only come from the International Court of Justice. Okay? It still awaits authoritative formulation, and the footnote refers to the International Court of Justice. Okay? So in that case, we see that sometimes, of course it's not always like this, but sometimes international tribunals may decide to give a specific weight to the decisions of other tribunals and of course of the International Court of Justice, because it is the most prestigious international tribunal. Okay, so there is absolutely no obligation for the World Trade Organization appellate body to do that. The World Trade Organization appellate body, of course, has the right to decide by itself if the precautionary principle is a rule of customary international law, which is, well, it was not the case in 1998. So the decision taken by the WTO appellate body is not a violation of international law. But what could be surprising is the way the World Trade Organization appellate body decided to rely absolutely exclusively on a statement given by the International Court of Justice. So it could give the impression that, there is a hierarchy between international tribunals. And if we only read that, we could think that the international tribunals cannot take decisions that could go against the opinion of the International Court of Justice, which is absolutely not an obligation under international law. International tribunals have the right to take decisions that differ from the opinion of the International Court of Justice. Okay? always